Well, let's get a perspective on the impact of these Trump tariffs. I mean, we all know this is a clear indication from President Donald Trump to shake up the markets around the world and to get the United States back on the top while slowing down the growth rate of China economically. So is this becoming a success for Donald Trump? After all, we see all countries now wants to have special deals with the United States. Let's get some insights into how the Trump tariffs will be implemented and its impact around the world. Joining me now is economist at the Institute of Political Economy from London, is Charith Gunawardena. Thank you very much, Charith, for your time. Good to see you. And first of all, Sri Lanka is looking at an additional tax hike of 54% when exporting to the US market, where we export, I think, around 25% from our total exports. Do you think these taxes would impact majorly with regard to doing business with the United States? Because we saw how initially China being slapped with over 145% of the tax, but now they've settled at 30%. How will this impact Sri Lanka?
Thanks, Mahieash, for the opportunity to say a few words. Of course, the Trump tariffs, if they do actually implement the 44% tariffs in the 90 days they mentioned, there will be some significant impact on Sri Lanka. So to start with, it could impact our export revenue. Like you mentioned, 25% of our exports go to the USA, and we are in desperate need for foreign currency since our debt default in 2022. So we need funds for essential imports like fuel, high-tech, and medicines. We need it for development purposes. We need to build our reserves, which are still quite low, even if it's at 6.5 billion. And of course, we have to start repaying our debts in 2028. External debts. So the Trump's tariffs, if there's any loss of export revenue, it will impact Sri Lanka. And there also could be impact on job losses in the manufacturing sectors, which is really which will be reliant on the US markets. Now, the other worrying thing for Sri Lanka is that there'll be pressure on domestic worker wages because the buyers of our goods will try to avoid transferring all the additional cost to their consumers, their buyers, and they might put the pressure on the suppliers to reduce the prices which they buy it from. So the worry is that there could be a pressure on domestic worker wages, and more importantly, there could be a reduced investor confidence in our export-led sectors if they know that Sri Lankan goods are facing that sort of level of tariffs to the USA. So there really needs to be some urgent diplomatic engagement to negotiate exceptions and possibly take mitigating measures as well.
Charith, indeed, the government is saying talks with the United States is very positive and that we can avoid this tax of 44%. However, the government is yet to give us any tangible proof of such. Is this a good time for Sri Lanka to look at elsewhere for its imports and exports? Perhaps China, capitalizing on the rivalry with the US?
I mean, starting with the conversation with the USA, of course, you have to engage, but it has to be, Sri Lanka has to be careful that we avoid a unilateral approach because it will be difficult for Sri Lanka to leverage a good deal on its own. So if we can leverage alliances with global South coalitions or regional blocs like ASEAN or SAARC and present a collective front, we might be able to get something better. Of course, we'll have to emphasize the development concerns and economic vulnerability which Sri Lanka is facing with the US policymakers, but we have to guard against the divide and rule tactics, which will be used by Trump administration. That seems to be very good at exploiting any signs of weakness. Now, while we do these negotiations, it's important that we take a strong, longer-term strategic view. So short-term relief alone shouldn't damage, we should make sure that it doesn't damage our long-term interests. So Trump tariffs are clearly reordering the global economic architecture. So we must be prepared for a more fragmented trade environment. So like it might be necessary for us to reduce the dependence on the US markets. We seem to be concentrating on very few markets, so we should try and diversify more and maybe strengthen the regional trade ties like with India, China, and other ASEAN countries, and move up the value chain through industrial policy and technology upgrading.
All right, let's leave it at that. That was economist Charith Gunawardena from the Institute of Political Economy in the United Kingdom. Appreciate it, Charith. Thank you very much. Let's take a short commercial break. When we return, political economist Shiran Ilan-Peruma will join to comment on Sri Lanka's rising unemployment rates. How will this impact the economy? And later, Minister of Labour and Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Dr. Anil Jayantha Fernando, will be here to answer all the economic questions regarding the matters we discussed in the program today. This is the State of the Nation, back in a moment.